Hi, my name is Elle Shepherd, and welcome to the Wytching Hour. If you're new to our podcast, let me explain what we're about. First, this is a pagan podcast about all things pagan and sometimes a few in-between goodies. In this program, this is the first in our series of everything you always wanted to know about paganism, but were too confused to ask anyone. And when you did, you got a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. Sound familiar? The research material used is by somebody who knows even more than I do, and more about him later, and narrated by yours truly and my adorable husband. And in the second segment, because we want you to stay tuned for that, the second installment in our tarot table series, as told by our resident tarot lover, William the Sage, who also happens to be my husband. We have a lot to share with you this Wytching Hour, so let's get cracking. We're going to talk to you tonight about the legacy of paganism as seen through the eyes of yours truly, and none other than Carl McColman. And let me say from the outset, if you're really interested in paganism, you don't want to miss any of this. So sit back, relax, and send someone else for the herbal tea and snacks. Now buckle your seatbelts and let's get started. First of all, you need to know that Carl McColman was a devoted pagan for many, many years. He is also a brilliant writer. He wrote, in my humble opinion, the best in-depth explanation of the pagan religion that I personally have ever read. And believe me, I have read mountains of books and information on this elusive subject that seems to confuse a lot of people. The more they try to sort it out, the murkier it becomes. That's the thing that you need to know about Carl. He knows paganism. The second thing you need to know is after devoting so much of his life to being the most dedicated, knowledgeable, satisfied pagan I ever followed as an icon of the religion. Okay, are you sitting down? He left paganism and returned to his Catholic roots. My only regret is that I never got to meet him or talk to him in person. If I had, I would have asked him many, many questions about the time in between when he changed his mind and left his pagan faith. I'd also tell him, don't forget that Catholics have pagan DNA. Now here's the kicker. When I formed our local Ancient Path Covenstead several years ago, I created our mission based on his writings while he was a pagan. And then, okay, this is, I hope, not going to confuse you, formed all the tenets of our Covenstead based on the reasons he quit and went back to Catholicism. Believe me, it was quite an eye-opener, knowing what every pagan knows about the problems of forming cohesive covens or groups that last more than a few months or a few years, and also maintaining a very good core group. Now, the more you tune in, the more you will understand the whole process. The idea is to form a group or coven that stays together and prays together. Forgive me for that. So get a pad or something to write with, because the first part of Carl's work is hard to find anywhere these days. I don't know if he completely erased it or if it's still lingering about in some other, I don't know. I found it in Patheos. Over the next few months, William and I will share with you his explanations based on his works, which are absolutely fascinating. Hopefully, at the end of the series, you will have a much firmer foundation on which to form your reasons for wanting to become a pagan, remain a pagan, or leave the faith altogether as he did. It will be quite an adventure. And we begin tonight's chapter with Beginnings by Carl McColman.
Paganism is simultaneously a prehistoric and postmodern religion. It is as ancient as the fertility symbols associated with the veneration of gods and goddesses tens of thousands of years ago. While its newest forms have emerged as recently as the mid-20th century, broadly speaking, paganism encompasses two key characteristics. One, religious and spiritual practices concerning the worship of or devotion to the earth, or the natural world, and or the manifest physical universe. And or two, belief in spiritual beings, goddesses, gods, nature spirits, such as fairies, elves, and power animals, and ancestral spirits. Not all expressions of paganism incorporate both of these characteristics. It is possible to be a nature mystic without worshiping the goddesses or the gods, and vice versa. Many of the gods and spirits venerated by pagans have strong ties to nature. For example, power animals are helpful spirits in shamanic practice, each one related to an animal present in the physical world. By their very nature, prehistoric religions have left behind no written records, but are known by archaeological remains. Throughout the world, graveyards and ceremonial sites reveal evidence of magical practices or sacrificial rites, and a veneration of gods, goddesses, and or mythic beings. Paleolithic images, such as those discovered in Willendorf in Austria, date as far back as 22,000 to 29,000 BCE. These figures are regarded as fertility symbols and goddess symbols that were oriented toward nature, the earth, and the feminine, as opposed to the later worship of masculine sky gods or transcendent deities.
Other archaeological evidence suggests early magical or religious practices, often with a strong focus of nature. For example, an ornately decorated silver cauldron found near Gundestrup in Denmark and believed to be of Celtic origin and dated to the 1st century BCE includes a variety of magical, religious, and natural symbolism on its surface. Particularly striking is the symbol of a man sitting in a cross-legged position wearing a crown of antlers and holding a torque, that's a ceremonial neck ornament, in one hand and a serpent in the other hand. This image has variously been interpreted as a representation of Kununos, literally the horned one, or a priest or druid who engaged in magical rites that involved the guidance of animal spirits. Mythologies from around the world often include stories of gods and goddesses with strong ties to the natural world, like Gaia, Rhea, which was Greek, Nertus, Germanic, or Nantosuelta, Gaulish. Many deities were associated with the particular elements of nature, such as the Greek gods Zeus, sky, thunder, Poseidon, the sea, and Demeter, grain, harvest. Paganism has such strong ties with nature and physical reality. Paganism is also understood as nature religion. In 279 BCE, a Gaulish chieftain, Brennus, led a raiding party into Greece and sacked Delphi, the seat of a renowned oracle. According to the 1st century Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, when Brennus entered the Greek temple and saw idols of gods in human form, he laughed. Brennus, and apparently all the Gauls, seem to have understood the gods and goddesses not as projections of human personalities, but the embodiment of various forces of nature.
Such nature-centered types of spirituality can be contrasted with otherworldly religions that emphasize a reality that is higher or better than nature. Examples include mainstream forms of Christianity and Islam. When Christianity became the dominant religion in Europe and later the Americas, it contributed to the suppression or marginalization of many indigenous, nature-based spiritual practices. However, old forms of nature worship persisted, often as folkloric practices. One example of this is the veneration of water sources in Ireland, where holy wells, originally sacred to local pagan deities, were later Christianized and became centers of devotion to the Virgin Mary or other saints. Nearly all interpretations of ancient pagan religions are contested within scholarly circles. Although practitioners of modern forms of paganism appeal to the past to legitimize their practice, some scholars argue that these contemporary expressions of nature-centered religion are essentially new religions, formed in response to issues and concerns of their day, and related to the past only insofar as they look to archaeological and mythological data for inspiration. Now, between the 18th and 20th centuries, a variety of new religious movements have emerged, particularly in Europe and North America, that are based on pagan practices, nature, and goddess devotion. Examples of these would include modern Druidism, Wicca, and revivals of ethnic religions, such as Asatru. These revivals of ancient paganism are called contemporary paganism or neo-paganism. Influences. In its ancient forms, paganism had one key influence: nature itself. But in its rebirth in the 18th to 20th centuries as various new or revived forms of nature-centered spirituality, paganism, in fact, has been influenced by a variety of sources, not all explicitly religious or spiritual. In The Triumph of the Moon, A History of Modern Pagan Witchcraft, from 2000, Ronald Hutton traces literary, social, cultural, folkloric, and mythological antecedents to the writings of Gerald Gardner, who is widely regarded as the single most influential figure in the emergence of British witchcraft or Wicca in the 1950s. Since Wicca is currently the largest of modern neo-paganism groups, its influences have been traced to the largest extent. A sad mistake as far as I'm concerned, as there are so many ancient pathers, the old Celt religions, out here. Gardner published his book, Witchcraft Today, in 1954, and off the new Wicca groups went. Gardner drew on a variety of sources in creating the new fertility religion known as Wicca, but most of you already know that. Literary adoration of nature, modern forms of nature spirituality emerged out of the Romantic movement of the 19th century. Romantic poets venerated and celebrated nature. This event contributed to the establishment of organizations devoted to respect for nature, such as the Boy Scouts, but also to increased interest in ancient forms of religion as means for interacting with the natural world in a spiritual way.
So, romantic interest in primitive religion. Certainly, vestigial forms of indigenous European paganism could be associated with folklore and practices. Veneration of water at holy wells, ceremonial bonfires during seasonal festivals, and the cunning man, traditions of folk healers and diviners, all point to religious and spiritual yearning that run counter to the prevailing Christian faith in England. Speculations of a great mother goddess cult in antiquity. By the early 21st century, the concept of one single great mother goddess had fallen out of scholarly favor, but in the late 19th century and early 20th century, it was again a popular idea. The great mother goddess emerged as an attractive alternative to the overly male image of God promoted by the Abrahamic religions, and furthermore became the emblematic of matter and earth as Mother of the Earth. The culture of Merry England, a nostalgic celebration of English folklore and customs, some of which may well have had ancient roots, but others of which could have been more recent in origin. May Day celebrations, particularly the Maypole, Morris dancing, Yuletide customs, fairy lore, Druidism, and various other seasonal festivals all became popular for advocates of nature, spirituality, and all of these folkloric practices had an explicit religious dimension to them. They were seen as embedded in ancient British paganism.
Anthropological speculation about witchcraft, another byproduct of Romanticism, was an interest in occultism and supernatural phenomena, including theosophy, spiritualism, and ceremonial magic. In this context, scholars began to speculate about the true nature of witchcraft, as suppressed by Christianity, particularly in the late medieval and early modern periods. Researchers helped fashion a new scholarly consensus in which witchcraft, as persecuted by Christianity, became seen not as the practice of devil worship, but rather as the vestigial remains of authentic pre-Christian European religion. A romantic revisioning of the witch persecutions of early modern Europe, the witch trials of Europe became interpreted as a form of religious persecution, in which the dominant faith, Christianity, systematically attacked the weaker old religion or ancient European paganism. This shift in perception changed the image of the witches of Europe from criminal sorceresses to heroic victims. In 1784, German scholar Gottfried Christian Voigt theorized that 9 million people, mostly women, had been killed during the European witch persecutions. Until the 1990s, when scholars began to widely question that figure. In all likelihood, only 40,000 to 90,000 people were killed for allegedly being witches. Still a horrific number! Ceremonial magic and Freemasonry, many of the ceremonies of Gardner's Witch Coven drew upon rituals practiced by established secret societies of his day, including Freemasonry and ceremonial magic groups like the Order of the Golden Dawn. Although other traditions of paganism have had different influences, for example, the myth of the burning times, i.e. the witch persecution, typically is of little importance to Celtic deconstructionists. This variety of influence serves as an example of the many factors that contributed to modern revivals or recreations of the pagan path.
Okay, I hope that wet your whistle for the next installment next month, where Carl McColman tells us about our founders and sacred text. Now, for those of you who can't get enough tarot in their lives, here's William with his next tarot table adventure.
Hi, gang. Tonight's tarot card, drawn randomly from the deck of tarot, is the Hierophant, in some decks named the Pope. It is a fifth trump or major arcana card in most traditional tarot decks. It is used in game playing as well as in divination. In many modern packs, the Hierophant is represented with his right hand raised in what is known esoterically as the blessing or benediction, with 2 fingers pointing skyward and 2 pointing down, thus forming a bridge between heaven and earth, reminiscent of that formed by the body of the hanged man. The Hierophant is thus a true pontiff, in that he is the builder of the bridge between deity and humanity. In his left hand he held a triple cross. The Hierophant is typically male, even in decks that take a feminist view of the tarot, such as the Mother Peace Tarot. The Hierophant was also known as the Teacher of Wisdom. The card is also known as the High Priest, as a counterpart to the High Priestess, or the Pope and Papist. The papacy was not just a religious force, but also a political and military force. Remember the Crusades? Renaissance culture did not question the abstract ideal of the Pope as God's human representative on earth. But enough of history class, let's get into what this card really means to you. The Hierophant is very conventional, and this tarot card suggests that you have a desire to follow due process and to stay within the conventional bounds of what is typically an orthodox approach. Instead of being innovative, you will need to adapt to the existing set of beliefs and systems that are already in place. You will need to do what is expected of you. The appearance of the Hierophant in a tarot reading indicates that this is certainly not a time to challenge the status quo. The Hierophant tarot card suggests that you may be wise to follow established social structures and traditions. You may be involved in some sort of ritual, ceremony, or the trappings of religion. There is also a need to honor some tradition in your life, or maybe start some traditions of your own if you have none. Consider also exploring your spiritual or religious heritage. In tarot readings, the Hierophant card often stands for institutions and their values. The Hierophant is a symbol of the need to conform to rules or fixed situation. His appearance can show that you are dealing with a force that is not innovative, not free-spirited or individual, but is instead fixated on the way we have always done things around here. Groups can be enriching or stifling, depending on circumstances. Sometimes, we need to follow a program or embrace tradition, while at other times, we need to trust ourselves. How's that work for you? The Hierophant tarot card indicates that you may be compelled to join some sort of group or institution. It may be as significant as joining a new church or religious group, or as simple as going to the gym. This tarot card is about identifying with a group and a way of thinking that will have benefit for you and will prompt further learning. This tarot card can indicate a period of increased studying and learning through formal mechanisms. You seek to understand a field of study that has been widely explored and documented, and so you may go to a well-known or established teacher to find out more. The Hierophant may also appear in your life as a psychotherapist, a wise counselor, or a spiritual mentor to whom you will turn for wisdom and knowledge. He may be an authority or a kind and generous mentor who nurtures a spiritual awareness. You will learn new skills from this helpful teacher, as he has the wisdom to provide good counsel and advice. The Hierophant tarot card represents an institutionalized means for accessing the sacred. Remember, he's often referred to as the Pope. The role of the Pope is traditionally that of mediator between God and mankind. As such, the Hierophant represents the spiritual teacher who helps us come in contact with whatever divinity you follow. Unlike the magician, who simply points the way, the Hierophant is a trusted guide, one who will take us by the hand and lead us to our spiritual goal. All things that are righteous and sacred come with the Hierophant tarot card: marriage, alliance, captivity, servitude, mercy, and goodness, inner conscience and outer conscience. To sum up, what does all this mean to me? In essence, it is a guide to help you achieve your spiritual awareness through any means you deem acceptable for your chosen path. Don't give up, and if you have any questions, drop me a line and I'll do my best to help. Heck, I may be the educated guide sent to help you. Stranger things have happened. Until next time at the tarot table, this is William. Ta-ta!
Thanks, darling. And that was extremely interesting. It's one card I don't think I've ever even looked at. Okay, that ends this witching hour. You're hearing us thanks to our fabulous tech wizards and the Coil Entertainment Network. And you can reach us with comments, questions, and suggestions by emailing me at, listen carefully, ELLE at the Wytching Hour, WYTCHINGHOUR.com. Now, if you didn't get that, is L at thewitchinghour.com. All our Tarot Sages emails can come to the same address. I will make sure Bill gets them. And we'll be back next month with more pagan news, information, and tales of this wonderful, welcoming, natural, and forever beautiful religion. Now blow out those candles and go do something magic. Bye-bye.
The Witching Hour has been brought to you by the Coil Entertainment Network. Visit our website, coil.us, coil.us, and check out the Witching Hour site as well, thewitchinghour.com. Both have links to the Coil shop where you can now support the show by getting a Witching Hour t-shirt. And don't forget to leave Elle and Bill notes and questions. Contact information for Facebook and email are both on the website. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.